Merrimack TV is committed to our community. From gavel-to-gavel coverage of town and school board meetings to updates on town services and projects, we aim to keep you connected.
Good morning, I'm Kyle Fox, Public Works Director for the town of Merrimack.
Hi, I'm Diane Trippett. I'm the town clerk tax collector for the town of Merrimack.
I'm Captain Matt Tarleton with the Merrimack, New Hampshire Police Department.
And keep the public informed of every motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
And many moments, so you can be confident that we're here for you. Thanks for watching. Stay connected. Follow Merrimack TV on Facebook.
Good evening. Welcome to the February 1st, 2021 Merrimack School Board meeting. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. To all of you on Zoom, please remember to take your microphones off mute and rise to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag
of the United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the public participation guidelines for remote meeting. Because we are remote, we can't take live testimony. So if anyone wants to send any public comments, please send them in the following way. You may send an email to publiccomments@sau26.org. Again, that email address is publiccomments@sau26.org. We do require your name and address for the record on such documentation. Based on the amount of information that we receive tonight, our goal is always to read off verbatim the comments as we receive them. If the comments become too heavy in volume, we would just have to not read public comment into testimony. It's an all or nothing proposition. Regardless, we will put all public comments in our minutes for tonight's meeting, but we would just not be able to read them tonight if we can't read all of them. Up until just recently, that had never happened, and it has only happened once to date. I just like to be sure that we address this up front in case we should find ourselves in that position. The next item on the agenda is public participation. Shannon, do we have public participation?
You have a number. If you could bear with me, I will do my best.
Thank you.
Okay, first is from Stephanie Bennett at 42A Wire Road. Hello, while I'm sure you're receiving hundreds of emails praising the schedule change to 4.5 days, I'm speaking as one of the parents who disagrees. I've researched, and while I see the benefits you're insisting are there, I believe the risks outweigh them greatly. Cutting down social distance between children just seems irresponsible. As a parent to a kindergarten student, it is hard enough trying to enforce the 6 feet. 3 feet is practically nothing at all. While young children do seem to be faring better with COVID, I'm wondering if anyone is considering the teachers and staff that could potentially die from it. Exposing the staff when they have not been vaccinated and don't look like they will be anytime soon shows a complete disrespect for their lives and the risks they're taking for our children. In November, we went full remote due to staffing, and that problem has been fixed. You're now looking to add a teacher by filling their classroom. Will there be more staff to help enforce distance? Will there be plexiglass barriers put in? While I see the benefits to the children, I see shoving them back in full time when we've literally just come off a 2-month remote is completely unrealistic. The amount of times we've had to restructure, readapt to a new schedule is pure insanity. Stick with the hybrid and finish this year. Stephanie Bennett, 42A Wire Road, Merrimack. And that came in Sunday. So I'm dating back to those that came in starting yesterday and taking them in order. Next came in yesterday from Diane Connolly at 12 Vanden Road in Merrimack. Dear school board members and district administrators, now that the new learning model has been approved, I would like to bring up a concern about the start date for implementing the change. During a previous school board meeting, Mr. Schneider brought up the concern about starting this right before February vacation. However, that concern did not carry over into the discussion during the meeting when you all voted. An email was sent from Merrimack High School indicating that the change will begin the week of 2/15. I would encourage you to reconsider this and make a fresh start for everyone after a February vacation. It seems counterproductive to start the new plan the week before vacation. Why not let kids remain in the routine that they're accustomed to, and then start the new model after vacation. Thank you for further discussion around this issue. Diane Connolly, 12 Vanden Road. Next is, and bear with me, Adrienne Bernazzani. I'm Italian, I should get this right. So Adrienne Bernazzani, and she is at 10 Patton Road. And I'm very happy with the new proposal of 4.5 days of Zoom rather than 2. I wish it was done sooner, to be honest, but I'm very glad it's being done now for the sake of my kids. They do much better with the teacher rather than with me. And next, starting with items that came in today, is Jen Alexander for Cardinal Court. Dear Merrimack School Board, I'm writing to you with concerns regarding the decision to be made this evening about the switch to full in-person and full remote. But first, I'm saddened by the decision to not allow our students to enjoy one snow day this year. Do not recall being a kid and loving to get a random day off to play in the snow. Just because we have the remote option does not mean we have to use it every time. Let them be kids. They grow up too fast as it is. As a parent of 2 students in full remote, I'm wondering why we were not surveyed if we felt there was a need for a change. I know you have heard from upset hybrid parents about wanting their kids in school full time, but what about us? There's a lot to be said for consistency this year, and mixing things up for our students this late in the game when there is not actually an issue is confusing and concerning for many of us. Those of us that chose full remote assumed the extra responsibility and understood fully the need for us to help our kids throughout the day on both their quote live days and on the independent days. And we are working hard to manage it all and help support the education of our children. While of course we want our children to have as much instructional time as possible, we are still at the height of this pandemic. Making them sit on a screen for 4.5 days is not going to be productive or sustainable. More screen time does not equate to better or more productive learning. Since my last letter to you, my boys' classroom size just grew by 2 students and is now at 25 kids. I hope in the last 2 weeks since my last plea that you took the time to drop by some of the remote classrooms to see for yourselves how challenging it is for teachers to engage and meet the individual needs of just half their students at a time. Please know that while I am not an expert in elementary education, I do have significant experience in online education over the last several years, and I hope that you hear me when I say the model is going to have to completely change at this point if you think this is going to work. I hope if this change is made, you are prepared to provide resources, including extra adult support for breakout sessions, training, etc., to support your remote teachers in being effective online all day, every day. They have not been trained for this and should not be hung out to dry, and neither should my children who are lost in the mix of 23 other kids. One last thing that doesn't impact my family, but I wholeheartedly disagree with is sending students and teachers back full time. I've heard that the board is very focused on data. The one piece of data that I haven't heard mentioned by the board is the fact that 48 of 50 states have chosen to prioritize teachers into an early vaccine group. New Hampshire, as you know, is not one of those states, and it is unfortunate that you and the community is feeling the burden of that decision made by the governor. Surely, if 48 states think that teachers are deemed a priority, that does mean that transmissions are happening in schools, and sending them back full-time without proper measures is reckless and providing to the community that you do not care about the teachers and staff's health. Had teachers been given the opportunity to get vaccinated in this group, then I doubt you'd have any complaints in 6 to 8 weeks about going back full-time. At the very least, you should care enough to provide each of the teachers with N95 masks to reduce their risk of exposure. Here's another piece of data. Cloth masks, which is what most wear these days. Sorry, I lost my spot. Cloth masks, which is what most wear these days, as released in an article on January 28th, 2021 from CNN, can be as little as 28% effective, especially when social distancing measures are not adequately in place. Other countries have completely banned the use of cloth masks as well because there's data that suggests they are not effective. Here's a link to another CNN article full of data about countries banning cloth masks. Thank you for taking the time to read through this and keeping the health and safety of all your staff and students a priority, including the well-being of your remote students. Sincerely, Jen Alexander, 4 Cardinal Court. This is from Angie Amadeo at 8 Owls Court. Dear School Board, I'm writing as a parent of a remote third grader, and I also happen to be a remote first grade teacher in another district. I'm writing to request that the school board pause and call a separate meeting to discuss the remote program and students. And listening to these board meetings, it is apparent that sadly the remote students are an afterthought and decisions are made primarily to cater to the group that is demanding full in-person learning without listening to 2 key groups. First off, the teachers. I don't recall seeing any survey done by the school staff who will be in charge of providing this education that the board is voting on. As a parent, I would like to see a survey of their thoughts on opening schools fully with 3 feet or under social distancing and full classes in the small Merrimack classrooms, in addition to surveys done by the remote teachers and remote student parents. As a remote parent, I did not receive a survey asking if I wanted my child's schedule to change to 4.5 days of full Zooms. Many remote parents I've talked to have gotten used to the routine and blend of live days and independent days, and while more instruction with the teacher sounds ideal, in a remote setting, more does not equal better. I could not teach to my own 20 remote students all at once. I have the flexibility in my district to break my class size in half and teach to half the class at a time. It would be nearly impossible to teach to the entire group in the virtual setting all at once for the academic blocks. I've tried. It is hard to focus on children as individuals and engage them in a huge group and have an understanding of what they know. Students get frustrated by that they cannot be called on enough, and they seem to get lost in the sea of faces in little squares on a screen and I get frustrated that I can't give them the attention they deserve. Breaking my class in half and teaching to half at a time works out so much better. This is what the remote teachers in Merrimack have been doing in the 2 cohort model. Changing it now doesn't make sense. I feel like Merrimack remote teachers may feel the same. I wish they were asked. I feel the board needs to seek more input from remote teachers and parents before changing the model on them by combining the cohorts, which I believe will set back our remote children. This is data that directly comes from Merrimack, and we deserve to know that data. Lastly, Dr. Fauci and Biden did say that they wanted schools to reopen within 100 days. However, I was part of Dr. Fauci's presentation the other day that was directed at teachers. He said that this may not be the case, as schools need to be fully safe for this to happen, and he spoke at length about the importance of teachers being vaccinated. Please do your duty and make the health of our staff a priority. If they are forced to teach full-size classes before being vaccinated, I fear for their health, and I predict classrooms and schools will be forced to go remote anyway due to quarantines and shutdowns and staff shortages, which are happening in many districts around us, in parentheses, Manchester and Nashua, which we are directly in the middle of, end parentheses. Why change everything right now? Vaccines are coming. Keep the staff safe. We've made it this far without one staff or student death in our community based on the safety precautions that have been taken. Why would you throw all that away by flirting with disaster at the absolute height of this pandemic in the dead of winter by reopening fully? We are nearing the end of this marathon of a pandemic. Please do the right thing. Wait. Thank you, Angie Amadeo, 8 Owls Court. Next is from Stephanie Saxton at 38 Maidstone Drive. To whom it may concern, I've watched almost every school board since this pandemic come upon us all. I admit when the choice of hybrid or full remote was an option, I at first thought it would be okay for my kids to be on campus twice a week. However, I quickly changed my mind, thinking if this should happen, they would not be able to see their grandmother who has underlying health issues. I then quickly changed my mind, and with a family decision, kept my 3 children home fully remote ever since. I have never been happier with the way things have been. As I just mentioned, I have 3 children. Oldest son is a senior this year, which is another topic of concern, where I feel nothing is being done for the class of 21, but I digress. My middle son is in 8th grade, and my youngest daughter is in kindergarten. I know on tonight's agenda, the topic of having either fully in-person or fully remote 4 days a week for K to 4, and I have to say, as a for a parent of fully remote children, I'm highly against the decision. I already feel like my children already have enough screen time, especially my 5-year-old. Adding longer sessions of screen time on young children is not good for their health, considering my 5-year-old daughter now has to wear glasses all day. I would like you all to really think about the effects of this is having on us fully remote parents. We all choose, including the children, to be fully remote for all kinds of different reasons, and none of us want to change the way this is going, especially the younger children who are in kindergarten. I know these times are tough. I get it. We all get it. If you should pass the 4-day week or K to 4 for fully remote children, there will be a lot of unhappy parents and children, more so than now, who will feel that you are not taking our thoughts into any kind of consideration whatsoever. You all will be making our fully remote children and parents' lives a lot more difficult than it really should be. Please, I really wish you would take this, and hopefully the many others who have spoken up, into consideration, and have a heart and think of the children for once, and not just the parents who want their kids in school because it's too difficult having them home. There are a lot of us parents and children that want to be home because we feel it's a lot safer than being in school, considering just last week the high school had another outbreak right when hybrid started back. Thank you for your time. Stephanie Saxton, 38 Maidstone Drive. Next, we have Nicole Tomaselli, 11 Knollwood Drive. Dear Merrimack School Board members, I'm writing to let you know that I am in support of a change away from the hybrid model of instruction for our K-4 students. In a recent communication sent to families from the superintendent, he stated that we should make improvements to our educational delivery wherever we think we can make them, and this is your opportunity to do so. Districts all over the state and country are wrestling with staffing and spacing issues. We need to have a plan and long-term strategy that allows for as many instructional hours as possible for all our students. We need to get this done. To expect any student in grades K to 4 in Merrimack schools has had adequate exposure, modeling, or training this year to be able to do independent learning is ridiculous. You cannot send students off to work independently when they do not have the established routines, basic skills, or executive functioning to do so. Up until this point, our students have gotten 2/5 of the education they need this school year, while taxpayers continue to fully fund the district for 5/5. I understand the many factors that went into choosing a hybrid model in August, but now there is a substantial proof, locally and nationally, that there has not been substantive transmission in school communities. A January 29th report by the CDC indicates among 17 rural Wisconsin schools, reported student mask wearing was high, and the COVID-19 incidence among students and staff members was lower than the county overall, 3,453 versus 5,466 per 100,000 . Among 191 cases identified in students and staff members, only 3.7% cases, all among students, were linked to in-school spread, and she gave a link to the CDC article on that. We cannot continue on a path that shortchanges our bright-eyed, eager, curious, and youngest student population. The toll the disconnection from school is taking on youngsters is beginning to be documented as well. This report, published by the CDC in November of 2020, cites emergency room visits by young people of 30% since April 2020 due to mental health crisis. Another link to the CDC, another CDC study is included. Beginning in April 2020, the proportion of children's mental health related ED visits among all pediatric ED visits, ED, I believe, the education department, increased and remained elevated through October. Compared with 2019, the proportion of mental health related visits for children aged 5 to 11 and 12 to 17 years increased approximately 24% and 31% respectively. All of our students need and deserve direct contact and instruction 4, if not 5 days a week. We cannot accommodate them. If we cannot accommodate them spacing wise, then we need to ask other districts how they are doing it. I think you'll find that while our students are learning independently, other districts are zooming in the room to ensure that daily contact and instruction continues to happen. There's a list of New Hampshire school districts who are fully in or fully remote, according to an informal poll that was recently posted to the Educators of 603 group. Salem, Hudson, Littleton, Messinic, Londonderry, Pelham, Nottingham, Conval, Sanborn, Kingston, Newton, Seabrook, Litchfield, Guilford, Chichester, Gilmanton, Henniker, Greenland, Rye, Newfound, Fremont, Epping, Groveton, Candia, Brentwood, Ware, Stoddard, Hopkinton, Hollis, Brookline, Exeter, Kensington, Newfield, Stratham. There may be well more than this, and I would be happy to do a more diligent search for you if that information is needed. Certainly, I would look closely at all of the precautions and procedures that these school districts have put into place to prevent outbreaks in positive clusters. Salem and Londonderry are neighboring districts of similar size and population. If they can figure this out, then we should be able to as well. I thank you each for your service to our community, as I know these positions are voluntary and thankless. You have a real opportunity to set the direction with this vote tonight, and I would welcome the opportunity to talk to any of you in more detail if necessary. Nicole Tomaselli, 11 Knollwood Drive. And let's see. I have another one from Rebecca Worst, and it says 21 Carriage Road. It came with great disappointment, but not shock when my email pinged that tomorrow was going to be a remote day. You seem so keen, school board administration, to speak as to how these kids are going to school through a pandemic and need grace. For the second time this year, when Mother Nature tells us to take pause, you have again forced us to continue on. How is that giving grace? I refuse to subject my kids to the insanity. No longer do I speak of you as a school board or administration that supports their educators, but one that seems clueless as to the complexities of teaching and child rearing at the same time. There's no reason for or need for tomorrow to be remote, yet here we are again. I can assure you that the Martell boys will not be looking at a computer screen, joining a Zoom, writing an essay, doing math worksheets, logging into Canvas, meeting with their special education providers. What will the Martell boys be doing, you ask? Building a snowman, read a book, shoveling, playing with their dogs, sledding, playing a family game, sipping hot chocolate, take a deep breath. These students are not just talking about mine, need grace. These educators, not just the ones that work with my kids, need grace. They need a moment to breathe because it has been almost a year and we don't really know what normal looks like anymore. And for that matter, any chance you get to give normalcy, why on earth are you not giving it? Sincerely, Rebecca Worst. Next is from, and again, I apologize if I don't have your name right, but I'm doing my best. Alicia Gogwin, 46 Lamson Drive. I will start by saying I am understanding and supportive of the decision to get our kiddos back in school. I'm saddened by the time lost and know that this has not been an easy year for anyone. But as a parent who has chosen fully remote, the idea of switching to 4.5 days on Zoom is something that we are not on board with. We have been in school for 5 months now and have settled into a routine that is working for our family. These kids and their teacher have now formed a connection and a routine that they have become used to. The small class size allows for less distraction and more abilities for the teacher to give individual attention and instruction. The meeting lengths with necessary breaks in between work well, and the independent instruction days are clearly laid out and expectations are clearly defined by the teachers, and we have found a way to work on them that is well for our family. I'm concerned that second graders should not and possibly could not be sitting at a screen for 4.5 days. I believe that a teacher who has settled into a routine and has formed a connection with the class for 5 months should not now have to double these class sizes and rethink her teaching methods and schedules. I do not want to get my daughter back in school. The decision to stay remote has not been one that has been made easily or quickly, but ultimately it was made because of the consistency it could provide in an otherwise inconsistent year. Because of the flexibility it allows for a family who is trying to make the best of an unprecedented year. Because I wanted to keep my daughter with the same teacher that she has become close with and classmates she knows. From the remote perspective, I say please let us stay consistent in the schedules that we are used to with the teachers who have worked with so hard to get us where we're at. Alicia Gogwin, 46 Lamson Drive. Next is Brian Townsend II from 5 Mary Meeting Drive. Dear Merrimack School Board, I urge you to vote against the proposed K-4 plan of a return to full-time in-school instruction. COVID-19 cases are high in Merrimack. The numbers are significantly higher than when these this board originally deemed the environment too unsafe for full-time in-school instruction. I recognize that a minority of towns in this state have returned to full-time in-school instruction. However, they have done so adhering to strict social distancing measures and after implementing added safety measures, in parentheses, example, plexiglass barriers for students' desks, end parentheses. This plan lacks those common sense safety controls. Recent emails from administrators are only offering attempts at social distancing of 3 feet. This plan has wholly failed to make note of any additional safety measures, like plexiglass barriers to protect our children, teachers, and other staff. This is to say nothing of the fact that the vast majority of teachers and staff are not yet vaccinated. If there were few COVID-19 impacts in the hybrid model in Merrimack, I could at least understand the board beginning the process of developing a plan to return to full-time in-person instruction, but this is not the case. As I write this, my son, in parentheses, a second grade student at Reed's Ferry, end parentheses, is required to quarantine until 2/12/21 due to close contact with an infected individual in his classroom. I'm aware of additional clusters of individuals at his school at the same time that are under mandatory quarantine after contact with COVID-19 positive individuals. This is all with half the class sizes and double social distancing mandate than appears in your current K-4 plan. For these reasons, I urge you to vote against the proposed K-4 plan. As always, thank you for your time and attention. Brian J. Townsend II, 5 Mary Meeting Drive. I am seeing, oops. Okay. One came, I had 2 come from the same person, but one didn't have an address and the other one does. I have 2 more. And this is Jen McGinnis, 8 Evergreen Drive in Merrimack. My kids are in kindergarten and 3rd grade. We would much prefer a hybrid for sure until after February vacation. The half-size class sizes are hugely beneficial to both hybrid and remote cohorts. Remote needs the lower class size. In-person requires appropriate social distancing. Please reconsider. Thank you. Jen McGinnis, 8 Evergreen Drive. Let me just make sure I have this right. I think it's the same thing, but it has an address. If there's any different content, if you would not mind, I'll just read it at the end of the meeting. But if not, I'll go with this one. And this is from Chris Buck from 2 Chestnut Circle. As a father of 2 children in the district, with my oldest daughter in 1st grade, it concerns me greatly that we're not yet back to full-time instruction. I wonder and worry about how much better prepared students will be in districts that have moved to full-time, districts like Portsmouth. I worry sincerely that my girls are going to be constantly be playing catch up. What am I supposed to tell them when they are applying to colleges? Will they have preferential treatment since they lost a full year of full-time instruction? Speaking of Portsmouth, one of the most affluent districts in the state, it highlights a growing disparity between the haves and the have-nots. More affluent families and districts can either afford private tutoring or have a greater tendency to have already returned to full-time. A Yale University study has found that the disparate approaches to returning to normal school instruction is widening educational inequality and that the learning gaps created by the crisis will persist. In parentheses, Yale News, January 5th, 2021. Another Yale study found that childcare is not associated with the spread of COVID in the community. Taken together, it seems clear that the risk of increased community transmission in schools does not outweigh the harm from not properly educating our children. Online or remote instruction is not working. Our kids do not learn this way. I can't imagine the stresses teachers are under. I can understand reluctance to adopt in-person education. I can understand the fear associated with that possibility. While I have compassion for that, the essential duty of the school system is to adequately educate our kids. We should aspire to do more than just adequately educate them, though. We should aspire to give a superior education that is not possible in the current framework. How much education takes place on a screen? I think back on my own childhood, and it seems obvious that most of the learning takes place in the minutes between instruction and learning how to function with other people, how to get along, how to negotiate life with my classmates. These critical lessons are not coming through in Zoom. What should be driving this decision are the needs of the children. While relevant, the anxieties of the teachers are not the primary concern. There's enough evidence out there to support the idea that Where there's a will, there's a way. We can make this work. We can put measures in place to protect everyone and educate everyone. As a taxpayer and a parent, I urge the school board to provide for the best possible education. Aspiring for anything less is giving up. Chris Buck, 2 Chestnut Circle. And I think we are caught up.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Very much appreciated. Okay, moving on to the next item is the preparation. Item number 4, preparation for school district deliberative session. We welcome here our school moderator, Lynn Christensen. Welcome. Lynn, can you hear me? I don't see your audio.
I am not muted.
Okay.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. It's a little faint though. I don't know if you can get.
Hang on a minute. Wait. Try this. That better?
That's better.
Sorry, mic was out of position.
Oh, you're all good. Welcome.
Thank you. What would you like?
So Mark, so this is on essentially just to prepare for the school district deliberative session.
Yes. So I'm sorry, did you ask me a question?
Yeah, we have Lynn here to prepare for the school district deliberative session.
Yes.
Is it an update from her or are we working through some questions?
Yeah, I believe it's an update from Lynn. That's my understanding.
Okay, I can tell you what I would anticipate.
Yeah,
Having
first,
not anticipated this, but that's all right.
I know that you had provided us with recently you had sent an email, and maybe that's a good place to start, is to walk through the email that you sent as it relates to how we prepare going forward.
I'm anticipating doing an in-person deliberative session. We can do a Zoom, but it presents a lot of problems that I don't think we need. We have adequate space, I believe, in the APR that we normally use to host the number of people that I would anticipate getting. I go back and look at the number of people we've had in the past 10 years. We've had less than 100 people at every session. I believe we can socially distance those people. I would expect to have people masked because the school is requiring it, the state is requiring it. I will make provisions for someone who cannot wear a mask. They won't be in the general population, but they will be able to participate if they need to. But I'm expecting an in-person deliberative session. I believe it's March, whatever that Tuesday is. It's either the 8th or the 9th, I can't remember. Grab a calendar, hang on.
I think it's the 9th. It's the 9th.
Yeah.
The 9th is Tuesday?
Yes.
Yes, I would expect March 9th to be our deliberative session. If we need a snow date or an emergency date, a postponement date, it would be the 11th. The town is planning on doing their meeting on the 10th, so we can do one setup and one tear down, saving time and effort on everybody's part. I would expect to run both meetings very much the same. The school board, I would expect to be on the stage, 2 sets of tables, one in front, one in back, so that they are socially distanced. I would expect however many tables I need on the floor in front of the stage to include people like Mark, Matt, the budget committee chair, the attorney, to be available there. And the checklist people will be, as they normally are, by the entrance. We'll have plexiglass to protect them. I would expect the auditorium to be set up in, and we've done this, or I have not, but a number of other moderators that I've talked to have done this, set up in, for instance, one side of the room would be set up in single chairs 6 feet apart, in, of course, multiple rows. The other side of the room would be set up in pairs of chairs, again, 6 feet apart. So husband and wife come in, or people that are in the same family group coming in can sit together. Others can sit by themselves. That will keep people distanced appropriately. We'll have somebody by the podium that the public or the voters speak at, that will clean the podium after each speaker. And I see no reason why this can't work. Anybody disagree?
So I would, if I could just jump in. So it's very helpful to hear the town, the school district moderator express those plans, and we'll do everything that we can do to facilitate that. Nothing in what she said strikes me as something that we can't work with and accommodate. I'm going to get to Matt in 1 minute. The only thing that I would just remind the board and the community is that we have been diligent about evening fogging as part of our safety protocols, and our custodians are going to be occupied to help with the setup and the breakdown. So that's just something that we're going to have to take into particular account as we plan for this. But I think that from the administration's perspective, if that's the school moderator's plan, it sounds reasonable to me. But Matt, what's your way in?
Yeah, I just have kind of something that I'd like Lynn to kind of do a little research on, because when I heard March 9th, it just kind of struck me. So I looked up the timeline for April vote, and I saw the first session for the deliberative session is between February 27th through March 6th. And I heard the date that she used is March 9th. And
Matt, you were looking at there are 3 options for deliberative sessions.
Yeah.
You were looking at the first option with a February meeting, not a March meeting. We are on the second alternate date. So we have a March meeting with an April election, as opposed to a February meeting with a March election. So we're within the guidelines for the correct dates.
Okay. I just saw the timeline, so.
Nope, I'm happy to be questioned.
Okay, thank you.
We dealt with the fogging issue at the general election in November at the high school.
Yes.
And it worked very well. We cooperated with the staff, and they were perfectly happy with how it was working, and I think this will work as well. We are going to be limiting public access to the lobby and the APR only.
Yep.
There won't be any other access, so they can do the fogging everywhere else in the school and catch this when we're done, and I hope we won't be done too late.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We did have that. That was successful. That was a good partnership. I didn't raise it because I thought it was a problem. I just raised it just to be sure that everybody understood that that's a detail that we are paying attention to for all the reasons that we know we want to. So, but yeah, we have a past practice of that having worked okay. Well.
Anyone else have any questions, concerns, thoughts? I would just say, Lynn, thank you so much for coming with this information. I support the proposal that you put forth on how we should move forward with the deliberative session, as well as the precautions that are being taken. And I'm sure there's things like, as people come in and as they check in, you're going to have greater space between the folks, handing out the cards and things like that. But I think it's important to have that deliberative session in person. I can't imagine how that would work on Zoom. And I appreciate all the work that you're doing to prepare for it. And certainly if there's anything we can do to help make it run smoother, please reach out, and we're happy to do so.
Thank you. I anticipate this being as smooth as all of ours have been all along, despite all the precautions we have to take.
Oh, it's great.
Are you expecting, I was looking at the warrant, and just a silly question, are you expecting any significant discussion on the ventilation warrant article?
I mean, I would say that's probably hard to tell. That would be my opinion, but.
Are you, Lynn, are you talking about whether there'd be AV aspects to it?
No, I'm asking if you think there's going to be pushback from voters because of the amount of money. I mean, I think it's probably a reasonable thing to do, and everybody's concerned with COVID that's going on, and this is a reasonable alternative, but you never know. It's a large amount of money. Do you think people will have an issue with it?
Well, I would say the first thing I would say is we haven't voted on them. That's coming a little bit later tonight.
I just saw it on the warrant that was the proposed warrant that was sent to me. So I'm just curious.
Yeah. Sometimes, it's hard. I've been through quite a few of these, and, sometimes you never know what takes on a greater discussion or not.
I've been through a few of them as well. Not my first rodeo.
More than me.
And I like to anticipate.
Yeah. Okay.
You good?
Yeah. Thank you for joining.
Okay. Good night.
All right. Have a good night.
Stay safe.
All right. Moving on to the next item, number 5, review of K-4 parent survey. Mark McLaughlin.
So I'm going to turn to John in a minute. What I would just do by way of preparation is the board had asked for information concerning some specifics about the results of the survey that went out to parents asking about their preference for remote or a full-time return, and what the resulting answers would mean for class size and so on. So I just want to address a couple things, and John can easily do so, and I'm sure better than I. The first thing is, I understand that there are folks who object to the idea that we didn't ask parents if they were interested in hybrid, remote, or full-time. I believe I'm going to turn off my video because I'm seeing that my connection is unstable. Can you hear me? Can I be heard?
You can. We can hear you.
Yes, Mark.
Okay. So I'll just keep my video off so that it helps with the audio. So in any event, I understand that there have been that question. So I just want to state this. We were specifically trying to determine, since we can only float 2 options, we were trying to determine the feedback on the option remote, which we have to do, and the only other option we didn't do yet, which is full-time back. There have, and that's important because we were trying to assess from our community, bearing in mind that we were, trying to see if we could pull together a possible remote, full-time plan, just what their interests were. And I also want to specifically say that there have been some comments tonight, particularly, but then over some time that referring to, poor planning for that return. I would just say it's premature to discuss poor planning. We have been hybrid this whole time. We never had a plan for, our plan was to be hybrid. And we have been able to be 6 feet as a result of that. We have specifically, in an effort to be as transparent with people as we could, we said one of the consequences of a return to full-time instruction might be a lessening of social distancing norms that we have previously established. That's a different thing from saying that we've decided to, lose our focus on health and safety. That has never been the case. But we also wanted to be sure that we help people to understand the consequence of their decision, which is that it might be, given space requirements and limitations and the number of people who chose to come back, that it might be less than 3 feet, let's say 3 feet, and that if that were the case, that parents should know that up front. So that was our attempt to be as transparent as we could about the potential consequence of that decision. Not to say that we are, being incautious about safety. And as relates to plexiglass, when we have had, or other safety measures, when we have had hybrid, our numbers have been, obviously cut in half, and we've been able to maintain 6-foot distancing and did not require plexiglass. In the districts that have been cited that have plexiglass, their decision from the get-go was, in most cases, full-time from the beginning. So they had plexiglass. Matt is going to speak to you in a little while about some of the plans that we have put in place in the event that the board chooses to come back full-time at some point, that will include those very same precautions that other districts have put in place. And thirdly, I'd say that some of the districts that have been cited as fully back full-time, not all of them, but many of them are districts of considerable less size than Merrimack. So facilitating those numbers would be easier in some districts that were cited than others. So that's just a point of fact. But having said that, John, I'll ask you to elaborate on anything that I said, and then also just to briefly share the results that I know that you and members of the team pulled together.
Thank you, Mark. Proposed plan is the key word, proposed, and I want to restate that after a lot of deliberation throughout the year, we were charged with bringing forward a proposed plan of what it would look like to change some of our instructional model from where we were in the hybrid. In doing so, what you saw before you was last 2 meetings ago, actually, was a 30-page detailed plan with safety, to address another concern that was out there that was not addressing safety precautions. Well, there's 2 slides in that proposed plan that do address directly what safety precautions will be in place and what will change in our safety precautions. So I wanted to just respond to that. And also that to find out, we knew prior to the survey who was remote and who was hybrid. And we have a process in place that has served us well if families chose to change and go back and forth. And that process still exists on our websites today in each of our buildings. And speaking to the principals, it's been highly effective for them to look at each child like a case study and determine if the move can happen and is appropriate. So that's part of what is still in place. So our next step for our proposed plan was to move forward and survey our families and ask 2 options, either full-time or full remote. And I'm going to share those results right now of kind of what that came to be. So can everyone see my screen? So just give me a thumbs up. Yep, thank you. So in the K-4 family survey, this combined all 3 elementary schools. And I want to just thank, as I begin, Michaela Champlin, who is our assistant principal over at Thornton's Ferry Elementary School. She was very helpful and instrumental in help prepare this for this evening, and she deserves the credit. So that's our K-4 combined. As you see, we have 266 students remote, and we have 943 that have elected by the survey to return in person, which is about 22%. That in that slide, that would be remote, and another 78% there. And then if you, excuse me, just go down. And then Mastercola Elementary School, you'll see pretty similar numbers, 21% at 75, and 240 students at 78.5. You will see a trend here. Reed's Ferry, 93 students, 23.4%. In person, 305, 76.6%. Thornton's Ferry, 98 students remote, 21.2%. In person, 364, 78.8%. And then just briefly, looking at class size, you will see these are our average class sizes per school across our three elementary schools if we were to look at a proposed return remotely. And again, I don't need to read all those, but you will see the averages. There's a couple concerning spots in here that you will notice to us as an administrative team. And Matt, myself, and Mark met with the administrative team and went over all these numbers together. And there's a couple areas that we, if we were to move forward in this area, and the board did vote that way at some point to bring us back, we'd have to look at utilizing the long-term subs we have in place that are certified in elementary areas to one, to be utilized in a first grade classroom to even out those numbers at Mastercola Elementary School with the other buildings, and then one in a second grade classroom at Thornton's Ferry Elementary School. We continue now, and we'll continue with remote numbers. If they do increase, for example, if we have students who move from full-time to remote and our numbers start to grow, we've utilized remote classrooms from different buildings to even out and keep those ratios pretty much where you see they are. So that would be where we are right now when it comes to the survey. And I will stop sharing right now. Okay. And then I'm going to turn to Matt. And Matt, maybe you can talk a little more about some of the safety precautions and purchasing that you've been doing along to look at the possibility of this proposed return.
Well, as we have in the beginning of the year, we've stocked up on hand sanitizer, all the personal protective equipment that we need to make sure we have an adequate supply for any potential increase in enrollment or to get us through almost to the rest of the year. We have, in addition, purchased plexiglass dividers for students. Put that order in maybe 2.5 weeks ago when the board first started talking about the possibility of K through 4 going back full time. We're going to have, we should have had, and I don't know if they're going to come tomorrow. I think some of the order came today, around 250 plexiglass dividers per elementary school. And if the board, deems it necessary to go, or their desire is to go back K through 4 full time, we'll do a second order. So each school will have around approximately 500 of those plexiglass dividers to use however they see fit. Maybe 250 is enough given how they space out classes. Maybe they'll only be used incrementally in the cafeteria perhaps, or in classrooms where they can't socially distance enough. But we will have those available, and like I said, they're already there. They're being parsed out to the schools right now. So that's in addition to everything else we have done. And we're still maintaining the fogging. We're still maintaining the cleaning. We're still running our HVAC systems 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with the heat turned down, obviously, in the evening when no one's in the building. And we still have maintained the same level and protocols of cleanliness and sanitation that we started the year with, thus ensuring no really in-school transmission to date. So that's where we're at right now.
So that was, we're happy to take whatever questions that you have, but that was our summary to give you a sense of how the results were and how we're acting on those results in terms of planning.
Andy.
The first question, I have lots of questions, but the first one I'm going to go with Matt, is you talked about the plexiglass protections sent out to the schools. Explain to me how many are going to end up in each school, and is it in every classroom on every desk? What's the use of those, and what's the layout and the configuration going to look like?
Well, we have 250 each in the schools. If you choose to go K through 4, we're going to put another order in to have at least 500. That will ensure that every desk and every student has one.
And then the deployment would be, up to the individual principal, like it is typically in how best to accomplish that. But, but that would be the goal.
And they are portable. They fold up, they go on the desk, and they are portable. So if one wanted to collect them, carry them to another location, you could do that too. If you wanted to do small group instruction and get every kid out of their desk onto a table, you could bring those with you and put them on some sort of kidney-shaped table and then have kids in that area. So, yes.
Andy, you still have the floor.
I'm pausing for a minute. People go, others go.
Lori?
So, Matt, I just want to say thank you for ordering the plexiglass. When I was researching other school districts that opened, K through 8 or K through 4, and I looked at the protocols and things that they were doing, plexiglass is one thing that came up that I didn't know if we were there yet. And the other thing is a coordinator who just spent their time coordinating, the risk factors, making sure all the schools were in compliance at all times. And I just didn't know if we talked about something like that also.
Lori, if you could just clarify, when you say coordinator, just so that I can be sure we answer you properly.
So a lot of school districts have put just one person in place to, look at potential people that need to be in isolation versus potential people that may have, been exposed, or going through the schools and making sure that everyone's in compliance of all of the protocols, such as everyone's wearing masks, the desks are in a certain place. So there's like a compliance person who's also overseeing, there's one person that all of the information's flowing through. And I didn't know if that's something that we've discussed or looked at.
I understand. Thank you. So no, I wouldn't say that we have that. I wouldn't say that we can't have that. What I would tell you is that each of our principals and assistant principals, I'd say, are really excellent at, we meet all the time. They know what the expectations are. And they, I have found them to be very good at filling that role that you described. So I would say for the moment, it's been those folks. However, this, depending on what we would do next, that might open up another avenue of discussion in terms of that kind of coordinated role. So, we certainly would tackle that as a leadership team.
So just
the goal, I totally get the goal. The goal would be to make sure that, there is, consistent compliance. Yes.
Just a reminder that we're discussing the K through 4 parent survey. And then we can move into a broader discussion on the consideration of the proposed plan. Does anyone else have any questions or comments regarding the survey specifically? Andy.
Oh, I'll admit that I have not seen the survey nor the specific results. Maybe I'm just the only one and I'm lost, but what are the questions that were asked of parents? Do we have details of, because all we saw that, John, what you showed was the hybrid versus the remote, and then what the class size would be. That's really all we saw. So I'm curious to see what questions were asked and what other responses and categories there were.
So Andy, I can take me a few minutes to pull it up. That was in, I believe, page 29 of the plan, but I can certainly go back and pull that up. I put a sample survey in there so the board was aware, but I can go and try to pull that up and find it. It'll take me a few
if you
minutes.
could do that, and so that we can understand the count, of answers by, when we ask this question, how did those numbers break down?
I didn't do, I'll be honest with you, I didn't provide that data. I provided data overall. I didn't provide every question data. That's not something I was asked to provide. I didn't know that's what I was being asked to do. I just, I can get that. That's not something I provided tonight. I provided what the overall numbers were tonight.
John, can you pull up the survey?
It's going to take me a couple minutes, but I will. Yep. I got to find it.
Well, he does that. That was included in the plan, but it was essentially, Andy. While we're waiting for John, it was essentially, two questions really. I mean, do you want to be remote or do you want to be full time? I'm forgetting at the moment. I don't have access to it. John will be pulling it up in a minute, but it was not a complicated questionnaire.
Okay, no, that's fine. We can just move into the other discussion because we'll be discussing it, for a while before, and John can certainly pull that up so we can review it. I just want to make sure that we have that information as we move to vote on something. I just, want it to be clear as to how our parents voted. So that's really what I think is important. Okay. Is everyone okay if we just move to the next item?
So can I make one comment? So just sort of as a segue, I think, I believe that when the survey was done, it was just the questions, the way you describe it. Okay, so it was simple as that. I think that one of the pieces that was missing when parents filled out the survey was understanding the details around it, how it was filled in, right? You asked two simple questions, but as we heard from parents' responses that we've all gotten, there were concerns about, it's either remote or hybrid or full-time in person, but parents didn't understand what the in-person was going to be in terms of safety. Like the thing that Matt shared about the plexiglass was something that I don't think was apparent, at least to me, if not the board, that was one of the considerations. And I contend if the details around the safety were known by the parents filling out the survey on what it meant, what we were going to do in terms of safety items, we might not have gotten a lot of the questions that we got an email from parents as we went through this thing, right? So you asked very simple questions, but there were a lot of questions that spurred around it that raised up. So these will come out in our discussion, but.
Yeah, so Andy, I would just address that. And, what I'd say is that this was, what you just described was a version of the same problem we had in the summer when we presented the plan to the board on July 15th. And then the very next day we put out a survey and we asked parents, what's your thinking, hybrid or remote? You recall that we had a hard time getting parent feedback because they wanted more information. Well, what does remote look like? What is hybrid going to look like? What are the safety? And at the time, remember, we've never done this before. And so we tried to answer as fully as we could, but had to say, at some point, this is going to have to play out. And I know that sounds unsatisfying, but there's really not much of a better way to say it. Sometimes you just have to let it play out. And then we tried to, remember we had a town hall in late July and we tried to give people more information. And then we asked the survey again, we sent the survey again. And still we had a difficult time, this isn't a blame, this is just a fact. We had a difficult time getting responses. And it was to the point where we were in mid-August and we still were waiting for folks to provide answers. And we had to then say, we need an answer, yes or no, because we can't schedule until we get it. And that's when we developed the protocol that is still in place that John referenced to say, if you make a choice and don't like the choice, there's a plan or a process for you to register that and change cohorts or whatever. So what I'd say to you is that, I think that, not every single, we're talking about a hypothetical. This is a plan, right? So, I mean, I think we've been pretty clear that we take safety seriously. Everything we've done has been about safety. And in fact, some would say maybe too much. So obviously, before we were to go back into anything that would resemble full time, we're gonna. I mean, our past practice would suggest that we're gonna do safety things and and do this safely. And so I get your point, but some things we just can't anticipate every need that people are going to have to know, because sometimes we just can't do it. So anyway, the minimal things like plexiglass, for sure. Why don't we have them in place now? Because we didn't need them before now. And now that we are talking about a proposal, Matt has anticipated this, and he just told you that we will put in a second order, for more as needed. So that's just been the experience of trying to anticipate people's questions and at the same time plan. It's tricky business.
All right, I have the questionnaire if you want to look at it now.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. So here it is. Very simple. Pivoting hybrid to remote model to a full to school remote model. Please complete the survey for each child, complete no later than Monday. And along with this, before you understand, Mark sent out a message. I'm sure we can go back and show that, but that went out. Everyone saw that. A message went out explaining why the survey, and then the building principals also put out a message. So it didn't go out like a blind survey. And I want to be very clear about that. It went out with information on what they were filling out. So again, this is all stuff about possible considerations when we change. And then email address, student's last name, student's first name, grade level, your teacher's name. There's a drop down. You could just choose it. Beginning February 15th. And they asked right there, students will attend 5 days a week in person. Students will attend 5 days remotely. You saw those results. I shared those. And then my child, then the busing I didn't show you, but will require busing. My child does not need busing. That's it. So you did see the results of what we asked.
Can you go to the very top where the preamp before the questions are?
Yeah.
Stop. As you consider, scroll down so that as you can consider is at the top of the screen.
Where are you talking about?
See where it says as you consider your response? I want to see
you have this in your plan, Andy, too.
I understand, but you've got a huge plan where this is buried in the middle of it.
No, it's not. It's in the end.
Well, quarantine, possible changes, and bus routes may change. Current policies. So my only comment is that never mind. I'm going to stop talking. This doesn't lay out enough detail of what current policies remain in effect: travel, mask wearing, contagious disease. Bus routes may change, possible change in assignments, increased probability you need to quarantine, social distancing would be 3 feet or less. Nowhere in here, for example, does it say that we would be adding things that would make it more safe for students, such as plexiglass. Something as simple as that, because when you say 3 feet or less, that's what we heard as a board, that it was something that was very concerning to parents, because how can you do safety? And frankly, it flies in the face of what Dr. Fauci said in terms of following all the protocol rules, right?
Andy,
but let me finish, please. Let me finish, please. But when you talk about adding plexiglass to, as increasing the safety, it changes the dynamic, it changes the discussion, it changes the intent. So I'm just frustrated, because you may think that you're saying things clearly to parents. We get all the emails from parents and the text messages that are all over the map, a lot of concerns that something is simple. I know, but I'm just saying, we're being asked as a board to make a decision tonight or to talk about it more. For me, data is important. information is important. The survey was one thing that you did, but some things in my mind were potentially missing because what I'm hearing tonight. So I'm just frustrated in terms of getting the right data to help me make the right decision.
Well, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, we're just doing the very best we can. And, I don't know what to tell you. What we were trying to do was to be as open and honest as we could be about what the consequences might be of going full time. I didn't want to pretend that we could maintain 6 feet if we can't. So we said, it might be less than 6 feet, might be less than 3 feet. I mean, that's a fact. We could have pretended that that wouldn't be the case. And then we would have people in school and they'd say, why didn't you tell us? So, that would be more frustrating. So we tried to be as transparent as we could about the consequences, the worst case scenario. And as you see, it couldn't have been that daunting to people because a large majority said that they would prefer to come back full time. So,
I'll just jump in here a second, Mark, if you don't mind. So I'm still trying to just understand. So John pulled up those questions and I'm just trying to understand what the actual answers were.
There was only 2 answers. One, would they come back full remote or come back fully in person? And that was the survey the results that I showed.
Can you put that back, John? So now
I'm trying to just piece it together. That's
now that the board.
The second one was around busing, which I did not show the results for busing. Matt has those results. That mattered for. That's a lot of planning once we know if we're going back. It's premature to show those results right now.
So if
I'm okay with it. I just want to know how the parents responded to the 2 survey questions.
I'll come back to it.
The thing again, John, please.
I'm trying, Mark.
And while he's doing that, Board Member Rothaus.
So I just want to make a point. As far as the 6 feet versus the 3 feet, according to Harvard School of Health, in schools, this 3 feet is a safe distance in schools. And there's a whole study that people can read on socially distancing in schools through the Harvard Health Study.
Okay, would you like me to walk through this again, Cinda?
So what this is would be that of the answers, this is the total. So of all of the responses to that survey, 78% said that they would like to return in person. So they were asked, do you want to be hybrid? I mean, do you want to be remote or do you want to, and I understand we didn't ask the hybrid question, but 78% of those respondents across the 3 schools said in person. So now, John, you have a school by school breakdown. So if you could just go to that.
And it's very similar by school. You'll see this one is 21% to 78.5%.
So again, just to be clear, so the first slide was everybody, and the second slide John has is just Master Cole Elementary. So 78.5% of Master Cole Elementary families responded that they would like to be full-time in person, and 21.5% said that they would like to remain remote. Now, again, I want to be clear. I fully understand we didn't ask, do you wish to stay hybrid? And I understand that. So, but having said that, that's how, if your question is, how do we correlate the question with the response? There's that. So, John, if you could go to the next one. Sorry.
This is really helpful because I was confused at first because I just didn't understand that there was, I thought this could have been the demographic of how the schools are right now. I didn't. It wasn't clear like what the question was and that these were the responses to the questions. So that's where I just.
No, happy. Good. No, happy to go through it. Very good. So then again, at Reed's Ferry, 76.6% of families who answered the survey said that they would like to be, or they answered, I don't know, like to be, but they answered full-time return. And 23.4 of Reed's Ferry families opted for remote. And then John, if you could just go to Thornton's. So there you see 78.8% of families responding to that survey indicated that they would like in-person, and then 21.2 remote. So off of that data, then John, if you could put up the class size. So off of that data, which we needed, we worked to figure out, what would that average class size be? What would it be? And given that, could we maintain the social distance, at least the minimum standards that Board Member Rothaus just mentioned? And we've met several times on this issue. We have had our principals and assistant principals literally taking tape measures and mapping out the size of the room. They've talked about furniture that they might be able to remove, that they might not need, that they could remove to increase space. And off of that, you see the class size, and and in all those cases, our principals have told us that we can maintain 3 feet at a minimum. Now, as John pointed out, you see Thornton's Ferry grade 2, and John, I think it's MES grade 2, where we are developing a plan.
Grade 1, Mark. I'm sorry. Sorry for interrupting you, Mark. It's grade 1 at MES. You see the 19 compared to 13 and 17 at the other two buildings.
Grade
so
1 at
grade
MES.
1. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you, John. Grade 1 at MES and grade 2 at Thornton's Ferry. And we're developing a plan to use long-term subs to be able to get that ratio more in line with the other schools, and therefore be able to accommodate, the minimum 3 feet rule. But we needed the answers from the survey to determine the class size piece. That's the correlation.
Okay, so the other question I have is, did the breakdown in the survey results pretty much correlate with the current cohorts right now by school?
Yes, and John, jump in.
I can speak to that. Pretty similar. There was a lot of cases, I don't have, today's exact data because we've had movement, but I tell you that we'd have like 3 that wanted to go remote and 3 that wanted to come back full time. So it was that happened a lot. And that's where you see why some of the cases are a little higher. We had more come out of remote to go into full time than the other way. In some cases, in some buildings, we had the opposite happen. So overall, it is pretty consistent where we are now with hybrid and remote. It didn't vary that much. Only in a couple places that caused the anomalies we talked about that we have to put in some more support.
Okay. And then we also know that we didn't ask, who would stay in hybrid if they could. So, we already know that that's out there, but at least this gives me an idea of the questions that were asked and how that broke down. Does anyone else on the board have any other comments on survey before we move into a broader discussion? Okay, we'll move into the item number 6, which is the consideration of proposed instruction and learning plan for grades K through 4. Shannon.
I do have a question on this, and that is, what's the expectation of having more substitute coverage, or will there be an expectation that there will be more substitute coverage because of having full-time in person versus, the, I guess, lack of absenteeism that might be in place because of online?
So I want to really and try to be, as upfront about this as possible. We went remote in November, not because it was convenient, not because we wanted to, but because we were having a very hard time staffing our building. And,
question. Yep.
Yep. And so I cannot sit here today and pretend to you that problem is going to magically go away. It continues to be a challenge. And so what I will tell you is that our HR department has been working, so incredibly hard to try to generate, a substitute pool again. And for instance, just Friday, they had a virtual job fair. They have been beating every single, drum to try to find substitutes. And so we have slowly been able to increase that number. However, what happened, the other day at one of our schools is a good example of things that you can't entirely anticipate. Well, you can anticipate it, but you don't know when it's going to hit, and it could be that a custodian, we would suffer in the custodian end, or we might suffer in an administrative end. And I'm telling you right now, to get through what has happened at one school, we are, sending administrative assistants from one building to another to cover a part of a day. Tom Tuso is working to send a custodian over from one school to another school to do some stuff. And that means that, other things aren't done. John has said frequently, you have 100 pieces of a puzzle and you might have a challenge that makes it, wish that you had 150 pieces, but you don't. And before, I will just say it's frequently asked, well, what are other districts doing? Well, I don't know. I don't know. It's apples and oranges. Some districts are bigger than us. Some districts are smaller than us. Some districts have higher numbers than we do. Some have lower numbers than we do. Some have just fared better. We have certainly not fared as well in terms of COVID cases among our staff as some districts, and we have fared much better than other districts relative to that. So the question, what are other districts doing? It is impossible to, kind of say, but I don't want to go into this giving anybody the impression that the staffing issue is suddenly resolved. It's not, we're trying to tell you it's not a deal breaker, but it may well be that there are going to be instances where we're going to have consequences that we're going to have to deal with. That's just a fact.
Thank you. I'll just add to Shannon's question there too, is I meet monthly with the other assistant superintendents and curriculum directors across the state. And we talk a lot about this, about what you're faring well, how's it going? We have an association and we care how other students and kids are doing across the state too. It's not just all about our own district. We talk and we try to collaborate and share ideas and thoughts. And, in talking to them, they've had often a lot of the districts that we were mentioned prior that are in full time, they've had to close their classroom. When the teacher's not there, they can't stay in, and it's simple as that. And it's been a lot of in and out. And we've said many times as board, there's been a lot of transition, and the more transitions cause the more stress. Substitutes are very thin. We are at, we don't want to send kids to large areas and combined classrooms. We don't want to send kids to the cafeteria and have them sit there and be monitored, spread out. It's not what we want. We want to teach and educate kids. And that's hard when the adults are stretched. And part of this is, Mark was honest, they are stretched, and we are recruiting. Our HR department has done an amazing job recruiting and finding subs. And as I told you, I talked to other districts, they are not finding subs, and we are. So I think that we continue to pound the pavement and work very hard from that end. And I think that, it's kept us in when we can be in because of that.
And I guess really when it comes down to, we're talking so much in your presentations about instructional hours, and if we're finding ourselves in more of a substitute role, and having an increase in that presence in the classroom over the classroom teacher, are we accomplishing those goals? Because obviously we're doing more of that. There was less of that when there was remote instruction. So, and when there was, I think, hybrid, because again, I think it created accommodations that could be made for maybe teachers that have personal responsibilities with their own childcare as well. So, I mean, again, what we were talking about, what's it going to do to our coverage in the classroom? What's the classroom going to look like if we have them back full time, but the teachers are not there to teach, and we keep sending in substitutes, on different days. So, more so than we would have if it was, say, a hybrid or situation. So those are the hesitations I have. And obviously, as much as you're doing with plexiglass, which is new news and good news, regardless of whether we're 6 feet or 3 feet, I think, when it comes down to it, I think there's also the concern of, we don't have access to vaccines, and we don't have, we do have variants. I couldn't think of the word variants for some reason coming in that are more contagious. So, and they are hitting our state. We're fortunate enough not to have the South African one yet. It's only hitting, I think it was South Carolina and maybe was it Virginia. But still, with that considered, that there are higher contagions that are coming toward us. Are we in a position? And I think it does come down to the fact that we don't have assurances for vaccines for our teachers. That has me with some hesitation about the thought of going back full time. So I do think it's going to disrupt what seems to be, it's not the ideal apple cart, but it is getting us fed. It's, but I do understand, I appreciate you taking all the efforts to make all the options available to us.
Lori, did I see your hand?
Yes. So the consensus among public health experts that schools can reopen safely at this time. And they're not recommending that we delay due to vaccinations. Yesterday, top health officials in New Hampshire provided an upbeat report on COVID-19. The governor's reopening task force advocated for the reopening of schools across the state of New Hampshire. Patricia Tilley, the deputy director of the State Division of Public Health, says the evidence and the data shows that there's very minimal problems related to the transmission of the highly contagious virus in grades 12, K through 12. And she told that the task force that she's optimistic about our schools being able to return to in-person learning, which is consistent with Governor Sununu's message, who has repeatedly urged us to get classes returned to in-person learning. Our rates have gone down from January 21st to January 27th. And our vaccinations were at 17,000 per week. Our parents, they're most, their children. These are their children, and they want them to be safe. And I think they believe that when they measure everything, they're safe in our classrooms. And I'm a director of a high school program that has been in person since September. And 85% of the people in my program are free and reduced lunch. They're living below the poverty line. Some of them are in homeless shelters and hotels. And when we opened our doors in September, it was with caution and solid safety protocols in place. We had zero transmission in school. We did shut down for 2 weeks when the school board recommended a shutdown, but we successfully completed semester 1. And we followed the CDC guidelines that came out on August 1st, 2020. We went through those protocols, and we opened our schools, and we opened them safely.
Donna?
Okay, so I'm just going to say sort of my summative thoughts on this whole thing. So I wasn't in the school board, on the school board in the summer when the initial plan was created, but I was fully in support of the hybrid model because it felt to me at the time, with a sort of lack of evidence, anecdotal or otherwise, the best middle of the road approach when we had no idea what having any amount of adults or kids in a building would result in. Now, as we look for evidence or data in surrounding districts who have done it, we can see that a full in-person model for at least our youngest students is possible. Throughout the late fall and early winter, I've spoken to multiple teachers, administrators, and parents locally who are doing this to see how it is going, to hear what the negative effects are that they are seeing, to hear their positive results, to hear about their safety precautions, and how they have seen sicknesses or not pan out throughout this school year so far as compared to what their fears or anticipation of negative effects would be. In addition, I'm in this sort of unique position that I'm actually teaching full-time in a school district, in a school that is now in person. I'm teaching in-person kindergarten 4 days a week with 19 kids in my classroom. Some of our classes in a school have up to 21 kids, K to 4. So in addition to my research, I have firsthand experience, and my personal experience is with parameters that are very similar to the ones that were originally laid out in Merrimack, masking and a minimum of at least 3 feet of distance. We don't have plexiglass. I'm thrilled to hear that Merrimack is pursuing that because I think that's something that I've heard from Salem has been extremely successful. And I think that it's a very responsible thing for us to pursue. So thank you, Matt, for doing that, and the administration as well. In doing my research and in my experience, the fears that many people have around a full return to school for kids are simply not being realized in practice in the districts that are around us. Research far beyond Merrimack has supported this as well. Anecdotally, in a classroom where I'm in with kindergartners, people say, you can't make, kindergartners, they're always the ones that sort of get thrown in there because the youngest, right? You can't make them keep their masks on. You can't make them keep distances. And I'm here to tell you, I see it every day. You can. You train them, you teach them, and they do what you teach them. And with vigilance, they learn, they pop up out of their chair and you say, oh, your mask, and they put their mask back on and all goes according to plan. It actually, and those masks, they work. No transmission in our school. School's been open since September, no closing. So I think one thing I want to say too is the greatest risk in our school buildings is actually the adults in those buildings, because the adults transmit it to each other. They're the bigger risk. That's why I don't know about middle school or high school, and we're not talking about that, but the older people, adults, they transmit it to each other. The adults in the building are already in the building 4 days a week together. They're already, mixing in whatever necessary way they would have to in order to do their jobs. Even though the student population is less, the adults are in the building. So generally, when there's been any issues, it's been with adults. There's been, in Merrimack, no in-school transmission. Any amount of transmission there has been, any amount of COVID there has been in our school district has come from outside with adults bringing it in. So adults are the risk factor, and they're already there 4 days a week, 4 days a week. So I'm in favor of this proposal, not only because it has broad community support and I think that most parents want it. I do think the timing is important to consider. I'm open to debate on that for sure. February break and this date for the start of the 3rd trimester are maybe timing factors, timelines to think about. Those are just the ones that come immediately to mind to me. I would love to see, love the plexiglass. I'd love to see the implementation of a daily health attestation for parents to fill out, and or the purchase of at minimum thermometers so kids could be checked when they arrive at school. That's something we use really successful at our school. Quick temperature check, boom, boom, boom. Kid came with 100 degree temperature. I said, oh, you gotta go to the nurse, you're going home. And it just immediately weeds out anybody who could have any, obvious symptoms. My biggest concern now as it relates to this proposal is the impact that we'll have on our real, which is the remote for people who are watching that might not understand what that is, our real families and students. They've chosen to go remote from the get-go. And I think the people that are hybrid, I understand fully why they want to be in person. And like I said, I support that. But the people that chose remote from the beginning, their concern all along has been equity, and rightly so, no doubt. However, there are ways to gain equity without having schedules or direct teaching time being exact. So I'm hearing these parents saying that they are concerned about increased class sizes, which John, I saw your slide and it looked like that maybe doesn't need to be something that is a super concern. It seems like you guys are on it and addressing it, so that's great. I think they are concerned, and rightly so, about double the amount of screen time. And as the lone school member that voted against the K-12 plan for that very reason, I share those concerns as it relates to screen time, particularly for kids that are this young. What is best for this age group is in person, which is why I'm in favor of this proposal. I see with kindergarten, I teach both in person and I have remote kids. So I see how hard it is to educate the remote kids remotely. It's just hard at that age. So it's best for them to be in person, but I understand concerns and reasons for not being in person. But I don't want to create a new problem for them about saying, well, we also know it's not good for kids to be on screens 24/7, but we want yours to be on 4 days a week to create equity. I'd love for us to find a way to address the remote situation separately from this. And I don't, maybe I'm crazy and somebody can tell me I am, but I feel like the issues is around, like, if I almost feel like we should decide for K-4, if we decide for that to go forward, then say, okay, now we have to address how we're going to make that equitable for our remote students, but not an extra burden on those families who have great routines. Maybe you'll ask them and they'll say, listen, we actually think our kids are getting a great education, and this is good. Like, we have to find a way to maybe address these two things separately, because the real reality is their needs are different in this situation. And if they're choosing to be fully remote, I don't think we should stick their kindergartners, necessarily, or fourth graders even, in front of a screen for 4 full days because we said the other kids had to be in person. So I was hoping we would be able to find a way to be broken off from this plan, discussed separately, and a plan formulated that's equitable, custom made for them, and flexible to maximize learning but minimize screen time. So I think the unique concerns of that population need to be heard and considered and thought through, and those are my full and complete thoughts on this situation.
Any other comments? Jenna, agree with you almost to 100% on almost everything that you said. My thoughts are, I believe strongly that kids need to be back in school, particularly at this age group. And this is the right age group to start as we look at phased reopening. And I think that we can do it safely. I think it's been proven that it's been done safely around the state. I think that I also do not support going back on the 15th. I'd much rather see going back 2 weeks after the end of winter break, because people are going to be traveling, families are going to be traveling. I'd rather do a fresh start with, let's say, the second semester, the third trimester, which gives some time, for families, which really isn't that far away, by the way. It's really not that far off. It gives time for, starting the 15th, we got a lot of feedback from families that it would be disruptive for them. It's, of course, some would go back tomorrow. Of course, we know that. But that, for kids to go in for 1 week and then go on break and then come back, I'd rather start looking at right after break, the beginning of the trimester, and then be able to spend some additional time preparing. I think that also gives, when you look at our staff and our teachers, it also gives some of those that might have some comorbidities an opportunity to get those vaccinations if that's what they choose. Open the windows, crack the windows a little bit, some things like that that might offer some additional ventilation options. And then on top of that, to address the remote concern, which I also share, and we also have received a lot of feedback from parents remote, concerned about the fact that remote is working very well for their families. It leaves us, just as Jenna said, with a conundrum of making sure that we're trying to provide an equitable education for the remote versus the hybrid. What I would suggest is that we vote on the K through 4 tonight, however we choose to go forward with that, or make that motion, whatever decision we make. And then if we choose to go forward with K through 4, spend some time over the next 2 weeks preparing for what the remote experience looks like for those families and how we make it equitable. And I think that will give additional time for those remote families to be able to provide us with some feedback. It will also allow us to focus a presentation specifically around how we can work to make that equitable for those kids and families. So those are my thoughts.
Cinda, may I just comment on that
Sure.
for just a second? So I completely, I'm going to try to see if I can have my video work, and if you all can't hear me, I'll turn it off again. So the issue of remote has become something that has kind of been challenging in a way in working sort of with the board and the community, because for such a long time, and I never really felt it as strongly as some did, but perception is reality for those who feel it. But there was this drumbeat that we were not treating the remote families equally, that remote families were not, and that was something that was raised at the board level many, many times. We're the only district in the state that has dedicated a staff member, an administrator, to dealing with remote issues. The only one. And that has been outstanding support. I would also say that I could hardly imagine a scenario where I would come to the board and say, here's a proposal because everybody wants kids back. So we'll have kids back 4 days, but we're not going to have the remote kids back 4 days because the very issues that have been raised over and over again about equity, it would have been as if we didn't hear it at all. So I couldn't imagine a scenario whereby I came to this board and said, let's do this for these people and this for these people, especially if for the remote people, it was less instruction. So the thing that has raised here is the conundrum that we face all along, which I'll just say again, there is no way, and people can say given up. I've not given up. I mean, nobody could possibly say that with any sincerity. But there is a point where you have to say, we cannot square the circle. And what I'm saying is, we cannot run full and remote and then a quasi-remote to make it work for an individual family. That sounds harsh, but I'm just telling you, and I want to say it up front now, we make anything work and we'll do what the board directs us to do, but I just want it clear that, it's nothing about this has been great. But what this plan does is it offers more instructional contact time with teachers. That is what this board asked for. And we've delivered on that. Now, the consequence is that there's more screen time. Right. Not a perfect solution. But what I want to just remind the board, which was what we've said before, is that we're ignoring the excellent instincts and practice of our teachers. So nothing that we have put forth here for the remote says that it's going to be 4 days or 4.5 days, 6.5 hours. I mean, there's kind of become this sort of oh my gosh, what are you doing to our children kind of a thing. I mean, these people are talented, skilled people who know when enough is enough and when to, slow down and when to pick up and whatever. And those are the plans that we can continue to develop. But if there is going to be much effort asked of us to develop like a third kind of way, then it's just not really, I'm just going to tell you now, you're asking for something I'm not sure we can deliver. But if the message is we're going to, we want to have equity in terms of instructional time, but for those who have elected remote, we want to be sure that we are careful about their screen time and that we give them proper breaks. We certainly can do that. We've been doing that anyway. And I think in our presentation, we talked about some of those things that we would do. So anyway, I would say that closure tonight on our total plan would be very, very helpful. I'm talking about live, in person, and remote.
So I just wanted to be clear too, I wasn't necessarily talking about my suggestion was simply that, there's a lot of concern with parents of the remote that their kids are going to be put in front of the Zoom, straight, 4 days. And so, part of it is really how do we make that equitable and productive? And you're absolutely right. That involves, how individual teachers are going to work and utilize that time. But I don't want people watching at home to think if we make the decision to go forward tonight, that means their child is sitting in front of a Zoom for 4 days. I feel like we're doing a disservice to the community unless we just provide a little bit more information and thoughtfulness about how our decision will impact their children and their families. And so that's simply why I had suggested that maybe we could come back in 2 weeks with a little more information. So, that's just kind of, my thought. Jenna?
Yeah, I see John has a comment, so I won't say, I just want to clarify. When I said equity, what I meant was strike just the emails to the board, right? All along, I'll follow been equity, 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 equity. Now, when we're talking about moving the kids back into school, K to 4, they're like, hey, hold up, don't put my kid on Zoom 4 days a week. Okay, that's what I meant. I don't think it's equitable. That's not what I meant at all. What I meant is we've been hearing from them equity, but now we're hearing, well, wait, if you put them in there, I don't want that. Well, what I'm saying is if we decide to move forward with this, I would like to work together with the remote families to maybe help assuage their concerns that this moving forward will not be equitable, will be equitable, but it may not look like you're on Zoom from the minute a kid walks into school to the minute a kid gets out of school. Because like you said, Dr. McLaughlin, which I know 100% because I do it, no sane teacher would do that to a kid who's K to 4. They know it doesn't work. And the best way to teach remotely is to do it a different way. But I'm concerned then that remote families will be like, well, those kids are in school this many hours. My kid only gets this many hours. What I'm looking for is that time will be spent with remote families to ensure, to help them understand that what they're getting is both equitable, but also realistic for the age group we're talking about in the amount of time they'll be on a computer. That's what I guess is better, more clear way of saying it.
Yeah, no, that's very, very helpful. And so, Bill, as you know, we meet with the leadership team, a minimum of once a week. We meet a lot more than that. And Bill Morris is on that, all the time. And so I can pledge to you tonight that whatever the board decides, that is front and center. And Bill works hand in glove with the leadership team. And you've heard Heather Barker has meetings with special ed families, and that has been very helpful. Bill has developed a tremendous outreach with remote families, and we can continue to your point, have him partner with them as he has done already to continue to address some of those concerns. And I guess I'm a dog with a bone on this one. There are some things that this board and this administration will not be able to guarantee to a parent, just can't. And I know, because of what we've heard all along about how uncomfortable it is when there's an unknown, but I'd rather not pretend that we can, yes everybody to death and say it's all going to be great, 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 and then the reality is going to inevitably have to be less than great, because that's the world. And so I think, I just don't want to give anybody the impression that that that's the case. I want to be realistic. So not every question, even if Bill meets with remote families every day from now till whatever date the board puts in place, we're not going to be able to answer every question. There's going to have to be some trust there, and I think we've earned that trust, frankly. And so but I hear you completely, and that helps quite a bit. And I want to try to say, as the board makes up its mind on some things, that there's going to have to be a little gray area, because we're living in gray, and be comfortable. Well, I mean, comfortable with that. I don't know if anybody's comfortable with it, but whatever. It is literally what it is. So anyway, thank you, Jenna, for clarifying that. That is helpful.
John?
I would just add that, my role is curriculum instruction and assessment every day. Good times, bad times, COVID times, other times. That's what I do. I meet with principals every day. I meet with coordinators every day. I meet with them all the time to talk about exactly what the issue you raised, about making sure people are feeling they are getting the education they need. I'm not going to promise anything. I'll say I'll continue to work and adjust like I do every single day when I get up and every single day when I go to sleep. That's what we do. We work together to ensure that instruction happens. And, we have a great asset working with our elementary team. We know those remote teachers. They're staying consistent. If we make a transition, they know what they're doing with kids. We've already been combining cohorts through this past remote time. It's nothing new. They know when to have full group. They know when to have small group. They know when to ask for help when their group is too big. And we try to provide that help and try to work with them. The principals constantly communicate this with Bill and me, and Bill and I speak every day. So I think that as Mark said, I'm not going to promise anything more than I'll keep working on it.
Last thing I'll say is I have full confidence in the teachers. Teachers, they'll make it happen. I've no doubt.
Andy?
So I've been sitting listening. I obviously had 47 cents worth of comment early on in this discussion here. In looking at all the data, reading and all the information that we got from parents, reading everything, I came into this meeting prepared to not support the going back in person at this point. And this is going to sound nitpicky, but the fact that we weren't clear on what the in-classroom safety things were going to be bothered me a lot, because some of what I didn't hear and what I'm starting to hear tonight left me with a lot of questions, and I think a lot of other parents had questions too. I'm fully on board with the need to get kids back in school. You're not going to hear me say that we need to stay remote or anything. I can't belittle parents' concerns in terms of how they're worried about transmission. I can't belittle teachers' concern with transmission. Things are trending in the right direction, but we know that go through ebbs and flows. So I think that a decision that we make for any changes to be done after the winter break, the suggestion that others had, I think is good. It allows us to take a breath a little bit. But one of the things we have to do as we make this change is be as transparent and explanatory to parents and staff as we can about what it's going to be like. Because to me, just something as simple as the plexiglass partitions adds a dimension of safety for both students and teachers and staff that I didn't know about coming into tonight. To me, it changes the dynamic of what I'm thinking. I know, Jenny, you said you don't have them in your school, but when I hear and when I look at when I talk to teachers that say that they're not comfortable, I mean, in the survey that we sent out to parents, it said safety distance of 3 feet or less. Well, I know that 3 to 6 feet is what the CDC recommends, but the or less part is what threw me when I hear that, because that means that there's no guarantee that somebody's not going to be sitting a foot next to you in a certain situation. But if the ability for students or parents that have concerns, or all of them, or even staff, to have plexiglass separating when those situations occur, adds a level of safety that wasn't clear when we first started talking about this, and when we did surveys, and when we did things like that, or when we as a board discussed. So I know Mark and others, you think it was not as significant, but for me it was significant. That small piece of data right there. I think that in order to make sort of win the hearts and minds of parents and staff, we have to be clear about what it's going to be like on the buses. We have to have more details around that. We need to have more details of what it's going to be like when there's more kids that are, what's it going to be like when they get their lunch and eat in the classrooms or whatever. There's got to be more details. Last time when we were talking about, let me finish, Sean. I talked last time about a day in the life when we were talking about the 5 through 12. I think that the details that we can share in an easily consumable format about what it's going to be like for the kids, whether they're 5 through 12, whether they're K through 4, whether they're remote, of what to experience, and to take into account what parents and students' concerns are, to be able to share as much. I understand we don't know the answers to everything, but at least to say that we're listening and that we've got an idea and how we're going to approach it is very meaningful. It's very meaningful. I'm a person that likes consensus, and you're not going to get consensus on this, but the more data you share, the more information you share about the way it's going to be, the more that you give parents to make a decision, and the more that there's less for them to worry about or question or think about the what if scenarios, right? So I know I'm the oddball here. I mean, I talk about things in a very different format, but this is sort of the approach and why my position is evolving as we go through this discussion.
Ron?
So, Andy, I hear your concern, and I would love nothing more to have every detail and all the detail I can to give out to parents. We have continued since the beginning to communicate and put detail out as we know it. We have not been in school since last March. I don't know what it's like from a personal experience, nor do any of our teachers in Merrimack. We can talk to other districts, do all that, but our Merrimack students have not been with us. So the detail of what the bus will look like, I'm going to speculate and give speculation. The detail of what the classroom will look like, I'm going to give speculation. And I'm cautious, as Mark said earlier, to give speculation when I don't know. I haven't, again, I'm an educator. I want students in front of me. I want that to happen for our families and district. We can't give those details of the day in the life from Merrimack students because Merrimack students have not been back in our classrooms or on our buses fully. So we are speculating, and we've given all the speculation in our plan that we know currently now, except for the detail of which came after when we said, all right, this might happen. And we thought there'd be a long lag time in ordering some plexiglass. But lo and behold, Matt found there is no lag time. They came within 2 weeks. And that was something we didn't expect to happen. So, because again, we are speculating, we're moving day to day with some of these things as we try to move forward in the midst of the pandemic still. So those are things that are hard to do. What you're asking right there, I will be as transparent with what we can and what we know. It's what we don't know yet and the unknown till we get students back in front of us that I can answer on some of those.
See, if we would have waited, if we would have done the plexi at the beginning of the year, we probably would have paid 10 times the price and we would have waited 10 to 12 weeks. Now PPE is becoming a little more abundant. And so we were able to make a move on it, and we did. And the sooner you give me an answer as to what the board wants to do, what the will of the board is, the sooner I can place another order, or maybe I just will, for another $30,000 worth of plexi to ensure that every student has plexiglass. Now, you talk about, contact and what's going to happen on the bus. I talked about that a couple of weeks ago. The first point of contact at the bus is the bus stop. Unless you're going to have a safety compliance officer standing at the bus stop, making sure all those kids are 3 to 6 feet apart, that's not going to happen. They may have their masks on, but do you think they're going to socially distance on their own? And then once they get on the bus, and we were doing the AB schedules and the hybrid, we could fit one to a seat. Last time I told you it's going to be 2 to a seat. So that breaks the 3-foot rule right then and there, but it's for, a certain period of time. And we're going to allow siblings to sit together. We talked about that. And hopefully by doing that, that'll free up seats for other kids who aren't in the same household. But there's variables with this. Do we know exactly what that's going to look like? No, but is there the potential that the 3-foot rule is going to be violated at certain points during the school day and on the school bus? Absolutely. And that's a calculated risk the parents have to take, knowing going in. Same thing when they take them to daycare. You can't give them guarantees about everything. You can do your best to guard against them, but there's no guarantees. And that's a point that everybody has to realize before deciding to send their kids to school 4 days a week, if that's the pleasure of the board. So, basically, that's where I'm coming from on this. We'll do the best we can, but can we guarantee? We can't guarantee.
Lori?
So I, appreciate all the dialogue, because I think we're getting to a point where we are having a shared vision for a safe reopening of our schools. And as educators and parents and school board members, we all share the vision and the goal that we want our kids to be safe and healthy and learning. So I believe we can accomplish this. I think all of these discussions, and some of these discussions are very hard discussions, and it's getting us to the point where we believe that we can gradually, with a phased-in approach, open up our schools safely, and it's hard work. So, as everyone's exhausted, I think we're doing really hard work, and I think we need to remind ourselves of that.
Jenna? You're on mute, Jenna.
Microphone.
So can I make a motion that the school board accept the proposal as put forth by the school district for the return of K-4 in person?
Do I have a second?
And
do you have a date?
Ooh. When is the start of third trimester? Let me ask that question. I tried to look at the school calendar, but I couldn't get it.
It will be the 15th will be the start of the, yeah. The 12th is the end of the second, and the 15th would be the beginning of the third.
And that is
on Monday.
About 2 weeks after February break. Look at that.
So you said, John, it's March 15th, and so it's after the February break, right?
2 weeks after, yes.
2 weeks after. So if people go away on February break out of New England, they have time to quarantine and then get back on March 15th, right? Okay.
Correct.
That's right.
And I say on March 15th.
Well, there you go. You have a date.
There's my date.
Yeah.
Any discussion on the, do I have a second? Did I get a second?
Okay.
I'll second. Any discussion? I would say that, what I totally support the motion that's on the table. What I would like is a couple of things. One of them is, I think, as time goes on, to continue to update the public regarding our preparedness for it, as far as maybe there's something else besides plexiglass that we get. And Matt, I want to thank you for being proactive in ordering that. And so that would be one thing. I also, Jenna, you had alluded to it in an earlier discussion, was a process for parent attestation. I'd like to see something like that too, that we come up with some protocols for, essentially it's not great, it's not fun, but I think we need safety protocols to continue to ensure the safety of our staff as well as our kids. I think that's pretty much it. The other thing I wanted to say is that there needs to be an understanding from the public, just like we've had throughout this school year, that when we have situations that arise, there may be classes that we need to bring remote, or we may have, like what happened at the middle school, there may be situations. And it's still my understanding we have not had any in-school spread, but rather we've had to take precautions that have proved to be an inconvenience. No doubt, but necessary precautions given the seriousness of the situations. And I just also, we just had one of these at Reed's at a high level. Mark, if you could just, I think we need to be a little transparent about, at least at the high level, that we, had to make some changes at Reed's, and I'd like you to just be able to summarize that.
Yep. So at Reed's Ferry, we've had, a series of things. I alluded to some already. We've had challenges to our custodial staff and our administrative support staff. And in addition to that, we have had challenges related to 2 classrooms, and we have, we always, in cases like this, we get our guidance from DHHS, and, they have been a little bit less able than they were at other times to do contact tracing with us, but nevertheless, they do what they can, and we take up the rest of the slack. Our nurses have been stellar at that, as well as our principals. And we were able to confirm that that was contained to 2 classrooms. So 2 classrooms have, in a particular cohort, have had to go remote for a period of time. And, that's required a reshuffling and so on. But I appreciate your mentioning that, Cinda, because that inevitably is going to happen to some degree. I hope less and less and less as we go on, but it's going to happen in the near future. I can almost guarantee it. And one of the reasons why I'm really glad that you raise it is because, we hear frequently that the upset to people's schedules is terrible. There isn't a person on our team that doesn't know that. But we have to quarantine if we have a close contact, or if we have a person who is identified, and we have to, and so that inevitably means certain disruptions. Nobody goes into this wanting a disruption, but disruptions are going to happen. And what we've been trying to do is paint a picture of reality so that people know, what they're getting into. Because I think the worst thing we could do is to, pretend like, oh, there's going to be no problem here, and then something happens. So I think we've been pretty upfront tonight about what the challenges are, and and we're going to manage our way through them the best way we can, the way we have. But I just wouldn't want to give anybody the impression that isn't, because, the other thing is, we hear a lot about, communication, but there are lots of things that we're not able to communicate because of the privacy of staff or students, and because we just take care of business. But that doesn't mean that every day we're not working very hard to rob Peter to pay Paul to get through a day. That's just the truth. So anyway, that's the summary of what's happened most recently, and it is inevitable that it's going to continue for a while longer.
Thank you. Andy?
So I've been really on the fence, as you can tell. I've talked about this off and on. My inclination based on what I'm on my current thinking is to not support the motion, not because I don't support kids going back to school, but for two reasons. One, I still think the mid-March date might be a little early, but two, and probably more importantly, is I still don't agree with administration saying that they can't say what the plan, they don't know, or they're speculating or whatever. I think what I need and what I'd feel comfortable is more details of what the intent is. I know it's in the plan. I know that there's things in there, but details around what a classroom is going to look like with plexiglass. Put a stake, do an example of what a room is going to be like. Do an example of what, how the remote might work. I know that the teachers are going to do the right thing, but there's speculative on all those kind of things there. And we've been dealing in speculation and what ifs all the way through. And if we're going to make a change like this, I need more for me to get behind it. And I know that I likely will not be a swaying vote in this, but it's just my personal belief right now on what I'm hearing. So
I want to, if I could, Cinda, could I just comment on that? So, Andy, I don't want to give the impression, that we don't have a plan. And we have had a plan that we have put in place for hybrid right up through, this first semester. The board has been well communicated with about that plan. When John talked about, we don't have a plan, if he said, we don't have a complete plan for busing, I think what he meant was until we put live kids on a bus, we can't totally predict for you what it all is going to look like. But I think it sells us short to suggest that we don't have a plan. Our plan is guided by student safety. Our plan is guided by, it's the balance that I've talked about incessantly since the beginning of this, trying to provide the best education we can in the midst of a pandemic where safety is a priority. So if you're left with the idea that we're just winging this, we're not winging this. However, there are certain things, and I'll just say it again, that we can't fully vet for you right now. And I'm not, you don't have to like that answer, and likely you don't, but I just don't, it's not entirely fair to give the impression that we don't have a plan and we don't know what we're doing. I mean, we absolutely do. And if whatever the board directs us to do, we will do it with fidelity, and we will be sure to be as transparent about the evolution of our plan as we can. So anyway, but there are certain things that we have demonstrated that we do and do well, and certain things, because we've never had, any group of students 4 days back since this pandemic began, and I can't predict for you. And I think it would be, frankly, not very honest if I were to say, oh, sure, yeah, we'll just map it all out for you, because I think that there would inevitably be things that wouldn't be accurate. And that doesn't feel like doing right by the board. So, I'm sensitive to this idea that, we're not having a plan, because I think we've demonstrated that we do, and we certainly can.
Did I see your hand up, Lori?
Yes. So what I was going to say is, as much as I want to get kids back in the classroom and, I want to phase it in, I think we've had some really deep dialogue tonight. I think that the board came to a lot of consensus. I think we're moving in the right direction. We want to reopen. So I'm going to support the plan that Jenna proposed.
Any last comments before we call the vote? All right. All those in favor of Jenna's motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So 2, the motion carries 3-0. Next item on the agenda is item number 7, which is the board's response to draft warrant articles on the 2021 warrant. You all should have in your packet the draft articles. And I think probably the best way to do this is maybe just to go down them one by one. Or I think that's probably the best way for people following at home. Article number 1, that is to elect all necessary school district officers for the ensuing year. And I think that's just a no-brainer. I think we can move forward with that. And I don't know what makes the most sense, just to do a motion at the end regarding all of them and just know each one individual. Okay.
No, I think it would have to have its own vote so we could put it on the ballot. So
okay. Oh yeah. Gotcha.
And by the way, Article 2 does not need the budget committee, but it does not have a place for us to vote.
Oh, you need to vote on that one.
Right, exactly. So I just for guidance, our little note's not there. That's all.
Okay. So article number 1, we don't need to vote on.
No, we don't.
Article number 2, I'll read that. Shall the Merrimack School Board be authorized to accept on behalf of the district without further action by the voters, gifts, legacies, and devices of personal or real property which may become available to the district during the fiscal year? Majority vote required. Moving on to number 3.
Are we going to vote on it? We have to vote on this one.
Oh, we have to vote on it. Okay. And all those in favor of article number 2, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none, carries 5-0-0. Article number 3, shall the district approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Merrimack School Board and the Merrimack Educational Support Staff Association, which calls for the following net increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year. Year 2021 to 22, estimated amount $253,920. Year 2022-23, $257,813. Year 23-24, $267,499. And further raise and appropriate the sum of $253,920 for the current fiscal year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at the current staffing levels. Majority vote required. Lori?
I thought we were voting on it.
Oh, okay. Any discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. That carries 5-0-0. Article 4, shall the district, if Article 3 is defeated, authorize the school board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 3 cost items only. Majority vote required. Any discussion? We'll go ahead, take the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. The motion carries 5-0-0. Or the special warrant article, Article 5. Shall the district vote to authorize the school board to enter into a 10-year lease agreement in the amount of $4 million for the purpose of improving classroom ventilation through the purchase and installation of unit ventilators and associated controls for the Merrimack School District, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $98,556 for the first year's payment for that purpose. This lease agreement contains an escape clause. Majority vote required. Discussion? Andy?
So I just wanted to summarize for those listening as well as us on the board that the capital improvement plan had over the next 10 years approximately 400,000 plus, and it grew over the period of 10 years to address these ventilation issues where high carbon dioxide levels and other issues were within certain aspects of our district. It would take, based on that methodology, it would take 10 years to complete if we did that every year, a warrant article for 400,000 plus each year. Remember, we had Matt evaluate taking out a bond to do the work as well as entering into a lease agreement for 10 years. And the intent of both of those was to be to do all the work we could for all the buildings in the first couple years of the agreement, and then pay for it over a period of time. The analysis that Matt did showed that the lease option was the least expensive option and still provided us with the ability to get all of it up front. I'm in full support of this article the way that it's written because it allows us to be proactive and address all the needs, especially given it's not as though it was a big issue with COVID, but the general health and the ventilation and the things Matt talked about by in bringing in fresh air during all this, it would certainly make things a whole lot more healthier just in general. It allows filtration and ventilation to occur that can't in certain areas of our buildings today because we have such an old infrastructure within our buildings. So I'm in support of this, and I will sort of carry the water to the budget committee to explain the rationale why, and also work with administration and others to promote this and say the benefits for doing it. So,
any other comments or questions? I agree with Andy. I support this. I think it's as much as it minimizes the cost for the first year, which is this year right now coming out of COVID, hopefully coming out of COVID. But it appears to be that we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, and it puts a strategic plan as a way of addressing our ventilation and ventilation improvements that are needed and have already come to discussion, that we've already discussed as a board. I think when we looked at it, we looked at the cost benefit of several different options as a way to address this. I think it's the right time in the sense of being able to get ventilation updated so that our staff and our students have the health benefit of having the better ventilation, which in some areas of our school, although they weren't completely below the safe levels, they were lower, which affects, students' ability to focus, teachers' ability to focus, staff in the building. And so I think, being able to get a good chunk of this ventilation work on this lease plan, I think helps drive some, at least we have fixed costs that we can count on going into the future. And I think it's the prudent and right thing for the board and the community to do. All right. Any other comments? Okay, we'll go ahead for a vote on this one. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. The motion carries 5-0-0. And then lastly, Article 6, shall the district raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purpose set forth therein, totaling $81,875,163. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $81,918,937, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the district or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Roman numeral 10, and Roman numeral 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Majority vote required. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. The motion carries 5-0-0. Okay, moving on to the next item. That is the second review of the suicide prevention and response policy. Dr. Mark McLaughlin and John Fabrizio.
So I would just open it up to the board if it has any questions or particular areas of concern that we could address. We will attempt to do so. And the idea being that this is the second review and that the next meeting, it would be under consent unless the board had specific things it wanted us to address, in which case we'd bring it back to the board at the next meeting, to show you. So it's really a question back to the board as to whether there's anything that it would like us to address.
Is there anything, board, that you'd like to address during this reading or this review? Okay, so then the next meeting, we will have it, would we put it on consent agenda?
Yes, we put it on consent for the next meeting. Yes.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next item, approval of January 12, 2021 minutes. Do I have a motion? Made by Lori, second by Andy. Any adjustments or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. The motion carries 5-0-0. The next one is the approval of the January 14th minutes. Do I have a motion? Made by Andy, second by Jenna. Any comments or updates? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 0. The motion carries 5-0-0. We move on to item number 10, which is other. Anything in other? Item number 11, correspondence. I can state that we've received many numbers of correspondence, many of which we spoke about earlier in today's meeting, voicing support and concerns regarding our agenda topic tonight of K through 12, as well as some as it related to our decision from last week, and in support of our decision last week. Anything else that's come to your attention, Jenna?
I got correspondence from a parent asking about end of school year dates, like an anticipated last day of school and graduation dates, which she asked me and I thought I could answer by checking the school calendar, but I checked the school calendar and maybe I'm missing it, but the one online didn't have it. So I don't know. Am I looking in the wrong place?
No, we haven't, determined an end of a school date yet. Remember, we're in instructional hours, and this is trickier than it, might be in other years because, again, to the point of promising something that we can't deliver. So if we determined a set in stone graduation date right now, or a set in stone last day of school right now, and then, for instance, were to find that we were to have to go remote, or any number of situations that would impede our ability to deliver instruction, that would then cause us to have to move that date. And so what we are anticipating is maybe begin to talk about that in early March, but for those reasons. So that's what I would say to you right now.
There's our answer. TBD.
TBD.
Any other correspondence? Okay. Comments from the board. For their comments, new business. Any new business? I have one. I just wanted to say that in last week's meeting, a special meeting, we had an item on the agenda, which was a memorandum of agreement that we were going to discuss this week. I had pulled it and just wanted the public and any staff to know that the board is taking it under advisement at this time. Next item, committee reports. Any committee reports? Andy? And then Shannon?
So I don't remember the days exactly, but the Thursday after our last special meeting and then the Tuesday afterwards, the budget committee met. They had, it was 2 Zoom meetings that they had where they went through all the departments. They went through all the schools on the first day and then all the administrative budgets on the second day. There were a few questions that were asked around the Brentwood building and lunches and some other things like that. But overall, so far, I haven't heard any big concerns or changes or anything like that. Tomorrow night is another meeting of the budget committee. It's a remote meeting, another Zoom meeting where they will review what we did with the warrants tonight. So they'll see what the school board did for the warrants. So as I mentioned, I'll be talking about that one warrant article on the ventilation. And we'll also, they'll begin their deliberations of the any changes that they'd like to make to the bottom line of the operating budget. So that will happen. And then that follows on the 9th, just to let people know, on the 9th of February, which is a week from tomorrow, is planned to have a public hearing on the budget. So that's the rollout, if you will, for the budget committee.
Shannon, did I see you with the committee report?
I have two. So Parks and Recreation met on the 20th of February. So the ice rink is open at Watson Park, and as long as it stays cold, and it has been, it should be able to remain open. So just the only thing is, if it's marked not open, please stay off the ice, because it did delay the opening because someone tried to use it when it wasn't quite ready and they had to resurface it. So it is open. Keep an eye on the Parks and Rec Facebook page for updates whenever that comes up, but for now we are good. Winter Carnival is scheduled for the 20th of February. I know we have a lot of families whose kids participate in that. All Parks and Recreation events such as this now require registration, and they're limiting attendance based on, of course, COVID and social distancing. So with that, registration is required to attend these events because we were getting literally over 1,000 people at these events, and there was no way to socially distance. So look for registrations on that, and they are accepting them. And of course, if you are signing up and you cannot make it, please let Parks and Rec know, because there were some no-shows for the last event they did Halloween time, and they had to turn families away. So if you know you're not going to be able to use the spot, please give the spot back. They are also taking registrations for winter break camp, summer camp, and there's a spring break camp as well. So they do, they are already registering for those, and they are filling up. So go to the Parks and Rec website and the Facebook page, and all the updates are available right there. They're also looking for staff. I know we have students that work there, so they're looking for staff for different positions for the summer camp specifically. And so reach out to the Parks and Rec office if you are interested in pursuing a position. On the 23rd, the New Hampshire School Boards Association had their delegate assembly online due to COVID. And so all resolutions were passed as recommended by the New Hampshire School Boards Association Board of Directors. And then at the end of the meeting, the delegation requested that the executive director, on behalf of the association, write a letter to Governor Sununu to reprioritize teachers for access to the vaccine.
Any other committee reports, Jenna?
On January 21st, the CIT, which is the technology integrated, it's a lot of words.
Curriculum instruction technology.
It's been a long day. I should definitely know the full name, and I do, but not right now. The CIT committee met. We talked about Merrimack High School course proposals and the application for new course proposals, criteria for software selection, and there was a great presentation from one of the teachers at the middle school for the adoption of a specific kind of software called Pear Deck, which I found fascinating and exciting and took lots of notes. So the work of the district still goes on. Aside from all the COVID stuff, there's a lot of really good stuff still happening.
Great, thank you. Any other, and Lori?
So last meeting, I said I would reach out to the Building and Planning Committee about the ventilation. And I just want to let you know I did do that.
Thank you. Any other committee?
Was there any feedback?
No, they would have loved to meet on it, but they understood the timeline, and so they were fully supportive.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and before we move into public comments on agenda items, I'm just going to interject one quick thing, which is our next meeting on 2/15 will be back at Town Hall. we had planned for this meeting tonight to be at Town Hall, and obviously we moved it because of the snow. So just a reminder to all of us and to anyone watching at home, we intend, unless there's another snow day of some sort, to be back in our regular home, if you will, for that next meeting. So public comments on agenda items.
Cinda, we have 6 emails, so bear with me, and I believe we are good to go. First is from Laura LaCroix, and she's at 5 Whittier Road. Good evening. I wanted to write regarding the return to 4.5 in-person days. I have 2 children who attend TFS, and I have been very impressed with everything the school and children have done to remain safe while they've been in the building. For me personally, I know my children need to be in school more and really have more time in person with their teachers and to be around children their own age and less time in front of Zoom. I fully support a return to school. However, the timing couldn't be more concerning. To bring kids back the week before vacation and then have them return right after vacation is really careless if that's what's decided, unless canceling February vacation is on the table. We have the opportunity to go back, which is amazing, but the timing needs to be right. Waiting to a 10-day quarantine after February vacation and returning after that would be the responsible thing to do for our school staff and children. I'm hoping the board proposes a return to school after February vacation when the proper quarantine has been completed. Thanks, Laura. Next, I hope I get your name right. Oh, she tried to help. Kristen Tevapaw at 2 Grouse Lane. I would like to express my opinion regarding a change in scheduling for fully remote students. As a parent and an educator, I made the choice to have my high school children be fully remote. This choice was not made lightly, as I have a current senior and a child with specialized needs. I made the choice for consistency in scheduling for my children during a time when consistency is so hard to come by, as well as the inability of any school to ensure 100% mitigation, no matter how hard people may work to make it safe. My senior was not given the opportunity to take her AP classes or her honors classes, as they were not being offered to fully remote students. This was part of the sacrifice my child made in order to be a fully remote student. Now, 5 months into the school year, the proposal is to have remote students shift to 4 full days of computer time. This is not what will benefit my children, and it will throw a wrench into a schedule that has been working for 5 months. My children's teachers and providers have been fabulous, and the smaller class sizes have been more than beneficial and have kept learning rigorous. I understand the time and effort administration have put forward since the start of the pandemic, and I'm extremely grateful. I would merely like the board to consider not having fully remote students be in Zoom calls 7 hours a day for 4 days. I will not get into the literature on what the Academy of Pediatrics recommends. Little focus is being given to those students that have been remote since the onset, and how those proposals will cause an upheaval in their schedule. Thank you, Kristen Tevapaw. Next is Jen McInnes, 8 Evergreen Drive. Hearing the findings of the survey, I wish to highlight that there is no way to know from that who would prefer hybrid over face-to-face. I, for one, put both of my kids in full-time in school, but would prefer hybrid until daily classes in southern New Hampshire lowers. Just looking to highlight that the survey does not capture those of us who are okay with hybrid. Thank you. Kelly Wright, Turkey Hill Road, Merrimack. Students should return back to school full-time. School districts across the state and bordering Merrimack have been full-time since September with no issues or increased COVID concerns. Our children are suffering and are not getting a quality education. They deserve better than what remote is providing, and so do the parents. We need to work to keep the food on the table and a roof over our heads. We can't be doing both our jobs and the schools. I suggested this on Facebook after getting an amazing message from my son's teacher literally the week hybrid started up. Please note it is long, but gives you a glimpse into our struggle and what my kids ages 6, 7, and 17 need. Some children and families can thrive on remote learning and homeschooling. I'm beyond happy for you and wish you nothing but champagne wishes and caviar dreams. Always have and always will, but like others, we are not that family. Remote brings tears, bad behaviors, stress, anxiety, screaming, disappointment, confusion, lack of patience, the I just don't care and I give up attitude for everyone in our house. The kids hate school and don't want to learn. I become the worst possible me in every situation. I hate myself for it. I try to be better. The kids try, but for us, it's not the right choice. In Decker's words, remote is crap, mama. In AJ's words, I cannot concentrate, get anything done, and I just lose all desire to want or care anymore. I don't even want to go to college now. Rushton just screams, cries, and says he doesn't want to anymore. Then we have today. Today the kids went back to hybrid. I gave them fresh haircuts. They put on nice clothes. They had their backpacks at the ready and went off to finally see their teachers and some classmates they haven't seen in months. I got work done without yelling, without stress, without having to stay up until 2 a.m. and back up at 6 to 7 a.m. to work again. I was focused. I may actually sleep tonight. I was able to have a conference call with AJ's counselor and set assistance for him going forward, uninterrupted by screaming, crying, or a computer slamming. And when they all got home, I was able to put my time and attention into them, listen to their day, hug them, and hear them say, I missed you, Mom, but I had a great day. Look at what we did in school. I haven't heard those words in forever. I hate you, you're mean. Sure, I hear those words often lately, but I missed you, but I had a great day. Nope. Best words and best feeling. AJ told me, yeah, he hates getting up early, but he really needed and missed being in school. He actually felt good and confident trying to learn new topics. His OCD, anxiety, and ADD all in check today. And then this, I got this email from Decker's teacher. Decker has been a challenging kid, especially with remote. He's stubborn, too smart for his own good, and a few other choice words. Wink. But he went back and gave his teacher his best. He was respectful and focused. Behaviors we have not seen in, well, I can't remember when really. Not all days will be like this in school. I get it, but they wanted to learn and go back. They missed it. I missed it. Today was a win. All families need a win when it comes to their kids' education. They're excited for tomorrow. I'm excited for tomorrow, and we haven't felt like that in a long time. I know others celebrated today with the hope of a better tomorrow on a different level, but today I celebrate this little piece of hope for my children's future. Please understand our community needs school back. Sincerely, Kristen Wright. Or Kelly Wright, I'm sorry. Kristen was a couple down. Next is Wolfram Van Schoen at Fort Conservation Drive. Good evening. As for K4, I dearly hope that there will no longer be any discrimination of remote students by cutting them out of any courses that are being offered to on-premise students. The 46% of high school courses remote students are currently being deprived of are an outrage that we should not allow to be repeated. I urge the board to ensure this. We should also avoid splitting the schedules and resources between remote and on-premise as we did in fall, avoiding the additional needs for staff resources that ended up causing the district to go fully remote in November 2020. Thank you, Wolfram Van Schoen. And the second one from Wolfram Van Schoen. Dear board, the equity for remote families is a delusion. This dedicated staff member for remote learning the superintendent speaks of is absolutely without any impact and of no value that we can see. Doesn't matter if we are the only district in the state throwing money at the problem. I and my wife have shown the school district since spring 2020 how dysfunctional the online learning platforms are, how grading is being neglected and delayed, how students and parents are flying blind until after the grading period ended, and it's too late for the student to fix anything. Platforms are being used in random ways with no visibility nor standards. Assignments are inaccessible for students. The migration to Canvas was and is haphazardly done to the point teachers are lamenting to parents that they're without guidance. 46% of high school classes offered hybrid students were denied to remote students, most of which college prep, honors, and AP classes. It is disastrous. Calling this an outstanding support and performance is not recognizing any facts whatsoever. Wolfram Van Schoen. And that concludes.
Okay. Well, we will go ahead and sign the manifest, and I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Made by Lori, seconded by Shannon. Thank you, and good night. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed. Motion carries. Whatever.
Merrimack TV is committed to our community. From gavel-to-gavel coverage of town and school board meetings to updates on town services and projects, we aim to keep you connected.
Good morning. I'm Kyle Fox, Public Works Director for the town of Merrimack.
Hi, I'm Diane Trippett. I'm the town clerk tax collector for the town of Merrimack.
I'm Captain Matt Tarleton with the Merrimack, New Hampshire Police Department.
And keep the public informed of every motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
And many moments, so you can be confident that we're here for you. Thanks for watching. Stay connected. Follow Merrimack TV on Facebook.